We choose what we value. We choose what we focus on, what we pursue in our world. And it's those choices that set our direction in life and determine the people that we become. I'm going to tell you why I believe that and how I came to be the luckiest boy in the world. When I was born, the midwife did what midwives do. She tipped me upside down, held me by my feet, and whacked me on the back to get me breathing, which she did. She also broke both of my legs. It turns out I have what the doctor calls Osteogenesis Imperfecta. In plain English, brittle bone disease. And so the doctor explained brittle bones to my mum and dad, and then he went on to give them some advice. That advice was to put me into an institution so that they, mum and dad, could carry on living a normal life. And of course take great comfort in knowing that their newborn son is being cared for and raised in the best way possible. It was the 1970s. I don't even know if the word internet was a word. That doctor's diagnosis and advice to my parents was all based on one little paragraph in a dusty old journal on his bookshelf. Google and YouTube were still some 20 and 30 years away, respectively. I'm convinced that that doctor had good intentions when giving my parents that advice. He was concerned for their future, concerned that a future with me in it would be full of struggle, of despair and disappointment, because of course I was severely disabled. But my parents couldn't accept that advice. They were prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead so that they could raise me. And there are no words I can really use to express how lucky I am that they stood up to that doctor on that day. My life would have been very, very different had they made the recommended choice. Of the 4 kids in our family, I'm the only one with brittle bones. My brittle bones were caused by a mutation or a change in the gene that controls the production of collagen. Collagen is a bit like the reinforcing mesh in our tissue and bones, giving them strength and resilience. So my bones never grew like yours did. And of course they break a lot. By the way, today is May 6th, Wishbone Day, International Awareness Day for Osteogenesis Imperfecta. How cool is that? We never counted how many broken bones I had growing up. They just became part of life. Being a kid with brittle bones, exploring, pushing the limits, learning by having accidents. Broken bones were continuous. But in spite of all these broken bones and all that came with them, the therapy, the wheelchairs and so on, our home life was actually very, very ordinary. As kids, we were all treated as equal, always, and all given the same opportunities, whether at home or at school. I don't recall that word disabled ever being used when I was a kid. I was certainly never treated as different because of my brittle bones. Instead, my brittle bones were and are, to my family and friends, just another one of my many characteristics, part of what makes me, me. Of course, I have hobbies and goals and aspirations just like anybody else. But for me to achieve those things, to experience them, I need to be creative. And breaking bones along the way is just kind of part of the deal. I remember one day I came off my quad bike. I broke my arm and most of the ribs down this side, my femur, that's the thigh bone, and I smashed my knee. I remember lying in hospital, wrapped up a bit like a mummy, thinking, wow, this really, really hurts. But then thinking, I was riding a motorbike. How cool is that? As kids, we were raised to have an interest in and an understanding of the wider world, of other countries and other cultures and world events, to understand life beyond our own in small town New Zealand. We were also raised to understand that there are some things in life we just cannot change. Some things we have no say in whatsoever, like where on this earth we are born, into what family, what community we are born into, and into what day and age we are born. We call that luck of birth. I have this really vivid memory from my childhood. I was maybe 9 years old. I was sitting in my wheelchair in front of our house, enjoying a nice sunny morning, thinking about this luck of birth. You see, even as a 9-year-old, I understood that we live in a beautiful, peaceful, free country, New Zealand. I understood that I was part of a family who genuinely loved and cared for everyone, including me. And we lived in a day and age where we have all the technology to have a pretty good life. And so I wondered, could I be the luckiest boy in the world? My first wheelchair came when I was 4 years old. Since then, wheelchairs have been a very big part of life, a key part of any independence that I've enjoyed. Fast forward from that feisty 4-year-old with his first set of wheels, through my school days, teenage years, leaving home to go and study commerce, travelling the world, meeting and marrying the woman of my dreams, to my mid-20s. And I was using another wheelchair. It was a wheelchair that was really, really old. It had been customised just for me. And sadly, there was no way I could get another one just like it. So I started searching for a new wheelchair, a one that would meet my needs, give me the independence that I yearned for. I live in a world where physically I don't fit. If you stretched me out, if I could stand up, I might be 3 foot tall. And so I need much more mobility than what a traditional wheelchair could provide. As well as getting from point A to point B, I wanted to get to the floor and up high enough to do all of those things that we all do every day without even thinking, like open the door, go shopping. I call that mobility in the third dimension. I eventually came to realise that this wheelchair I was looking for simply didn't exist, leaving me and others with similar needs to myself without much independence in our lives. We live in the 21st century, an age of technology where going into space for a holiday is a reality. We fight wars from halfway around the world with remote-controlled fighter planes. And all I want to be able to do is pick up my socks and do the dishes. Surely there had to be a way. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a millionaire, just an ordinary guy with a big need and an idea. And that idea was to go and find an engineer, to start from scratch, to design the wheelchair that would give myself and others like me the independence we desperately needed. That engineer happened to be a great friend of mine. His name's Campbell. And we were the perfect combination. Campbell, a newly graduated engineer with no preconceived ideas to what a wheelchair should be like. And me, with a whole life's experience in a wheelchair. Someone who knows exactly what I need, exactly what works and exactly what doesn't. After almost 2 years of design, prototyping and testing, we had a fully functional wheelchair that I went on to use and test for a further 2 years. We then took our chair to the world's largest trade fair for wheelchairs in Germany. The interest in our wheelchair there was almost viral. It was just so different. And while at that trade fair, we met the world's premier wheelchair company, based in Sweden. And they wanted our wheelchair. A year later, a redesigned wheelchair, now compliant with the European and US product standards, was launched at another trade fair in Florida. And we shipped our first wheelchair from Campbell's workshop in Dannevirke, New Zealand, to the USA. Embarking on a product design project like this was something I had absolutely no experience in. No idea of the cost in every sense that was ahead of us. And I think if I had known the enormity of what was ahead, what was required, I'm not sure if I would have approached it with the same enthusiasm. I only hope I would have. So now to see our wheelchair being used all around the world, a wheelchair that was just once an idea, and the new life, the whole new world of independence it opens up to me and others, is very, very satisfying. My parents never used that word disabled for a reason. To label, to define a child with the word that is the antonym or the opposite of the word able would have been a disaster. The choices we make, what we value, what we pursue, what we focus on, especially for those of us living here in New Zealand, determines the direction our lives take and the people we become. And so, some 30 years after sitting in my wheelchair in the sun, contemplating life and asking myself that question, could I possibly be the luckiest boy in the world? Well, I'm still a very proud and passionate New Zealander. Still part of a wonderful family, a much bigger family now that includes children of our own. Still living in this amazing day and age in the wheelchair of my dreams. I just don't know if I could get much luckier. Thank you.